This from the Christian Institute. Bible-believing Christians could be hit by extremism bill. People who practice their faith in a traditional conservative way could face police investigations under a government extremism bill, the terrorism watchdog has warned. David Anderson, QC, the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, cautioned that people who are miles away from terrorism could be caught up by a broad-brush law on extremism. He explained that a broad definition could lead to numerous probes. The police are going to feel they have to investigate all sorts of people who are miles away from being terrorists but may just practice religion in a conservative way. To start applying the force of the law to people who oppose certain values, I think, is a really difficult and dangerous line to go down, he said. Anderson has repeatedly spoken against the government's anti-extremism bill. In November, he said a draft of the legislation was the single document that has alarmed me most during his time in the post. And the article goes on. Friends, this again is Bible prophecy being fulfilled in our day. Didn't Jesus say in Matthew 24:9, "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake"? And Revelation 13:7, "And the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them, and he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation." How will the Antichrist have this kind of power against the church? Laws would have been passed to make it legal to basically persecute and imprison the saints. Anti-terrorism laws and anti-extremism laws, but also hate speech laws, will be and already are being used against Christians. Remember the story of an American evangelist who was arrested and interrogated about his Christian faith after he preached on a London street that homosexuality was a sin. And more recently, although not a run-in with the law, the Christian singer Kim Burrell was booted from the Ellen talk show after a video surfaced of her preaching a sermon in a church warning people against homosexual behaviour. What gets me is the total zero tolerance given to Christians. How on earth do they get away with it? Anyway, getting back on topic, it will eventually be these kinds of bills, such as the extremism bill mentioned in this news article, that will be passed, that directly affect the lives of God-fearing, Bible-believing Christians. These laws will be brought in, as so many laws are today, for the so-called safety and security of society, and sadly, people will always give up their freedoms for security. Now this from the BBC, US election hacking, Putin sought to help Trump. Russian President Vladimir Putin sought to help Donald Trump win the presidential election, a US intelligence report says. The unclassified report says the Russian leader ordered a campaign aimed at influencing the election. And further down it reads, the 25-page report says the Kremlin developed a clear preference for Mr. Trump. Now that made me laugh, friends, because obviously the Kremlin is going to preference Trump over Hillary. Hillary would have gone to war with Russia. Surely a nation will preference the leader that doesn't want to go to war with them. Now, at this present moment, from all the research I do, I don't believe Russia to be the threat. The actual threat here is from the global elite who have hijacked the West and are attempting to prop up their world order by attempting to stop Brexit and Trump by goading Russia into war. They'll stop at anything to achieve their goal. The outgoing administration is doing all they can to derail Trump, which is why they recently expelled 35 Russian diplomats in the hopes of escalating tensions. Thankfully, it backfired and Putin didn't take the bait. And it's also why the government-controlled mainstream media is calling out so many independent and factual news agencies and labelling them as Russian agents, and also why the US has just sent special forces to the Russian border. It's all about creating a strategy to demonise Russia in the hearts and minds of the American and British people, to make them appear to be the aggressor and the threat. It reminds me of how the US and UK harped on and on about Saddam's imaginary weapons of mass destruction to justify that invasion of Iraq, now a failed state and a hotbed for Islamic extremism. The anti-Russian rhetoric being bandied about by Western leaders and backed by the mainstream media is all about vilifying Putin and aggravating tensions with Russia. A war would curtail the populist advance and re-strengthen the globalists' stranglehold. The anti-Russian stance is also about passing the buck. Hillary lost fair and square, and the globalist cabal was exposed for all to see. And this, although not directly related to Russia, but illustrates further efforts to wreak havoc for the Trump administration, Obama, and this is according to the Israeli government, was behind the UN Security Council resolution criticising Israeli settlement building, of which the US abstained and didn't veto. Israel has the evidence and will present it to Trump. Friends, Russia will only become dangerous if the West continues to provoke and vilify it in their quest for global domination, which at some point will be achieved as prophesied in the Bible long ago when the Antichrist comes to power. Now, we should remember this though, friends. Once that happens, once the Antichrist has risen to power, it won't be long. And that power will be finally crushed forever when Jesus Christ returns in power and glory. Hallelujah.